Okay, next up, work session to discuss the 2024 compensation analysis plan. Carolyn Fortune. Thank you, Carolyn. I'm excited for this one.
Oh, good. I am too, actually. But I am also incredibly anxious and nervous because it is an emotionally charged topic and one that I want to get right. I believe staff want us to get right. And it's nuanced, obviously. There's lots of different opinions on how to do this, but I am going to present to you the 2024 compensation analysis plan. And I wanted to start though by, I don't want it to seem like I'm buttering up the board, but I do want to say, Chair, when you went and did your interview with Kago, you said some things, I took notes and I wanted to repeat them during this presentation because I felt like I couldn't say it better. It was such a great way to articulate the purpose of why I'm even coming before you today and presenting this plan. You said we wanted to create a high expectation environment with a higher level of accountability. And in order to do that, we need to invest in excellence. And you said, invest in solving these problems in a healthy way rather than throwing money at the problem. And we do have issues in this community. We have issues in the county that need to be addressed. And I don't want this to seem like I'm recommending throwing money at these issues because that's not what this is. This is a strategic plan to give us the option to actually invest in the excellence that we're asking from our staff. It's a plan that has a reason and a meaning and a purpose, and it potentially could come with a hefty price tag. And so that's why I'm saying that out front is that we're not just throwing money at a problem. This is something that we believe will work. It's been rolled out to the leadership team. We've had many discussions about it, and I invite your feedback throughout this presentation rather than just kind of waiting till the end. I'm going to kind of stop and ask for questions throughout, just because I want to take as many notes as possible to make sure that we do get this right.
Thank you. And just to clarify, paying people what they're worth is not throwing money at a problem.
No,
I think
not at
I
all.
was referring to a practice that has been in this organization that we've found at times where if we have an interpersonal conflict, we just sort of pay for somebody to have their person to have their own empire rather than resolve that problem.
Right. Yes, exactly. So for this work session today, the discussion points are our compensation philosophy. I'm going to go over our compensation strategy, the suggestions for market pricing and salary structures, the changes that will need to be made for policies and process, and then a communication plan. So first, to start with our compensation philosophy, which is the backbone of our compensation plan. The purpose of this is very simple: to attract, retain, and motivate a committed, diverse, talented workforce that is dedicated to delivering high quality public services. We want to be fair and transparent. We want to be equitable in the compensation based on not just the organization's needs, but also on the individual performance and skills and responsibilities of each staff member. Zero tolerance for discrimination. What goes without saying, equal pay for equal work is just ensuring that we have this fair administration of pay, meaning we're not just complying with equal pay laws, but we're doing the right thing and we're explaining to people why we're doing what we're doing, which I'm going to get into the compensation or the communication plan in a little bit. So for the compensation strategy, ensuring fairness, transparency, and competitiveness was the point of putting together this strategy, and we were seeking to answer 3 key questions. The first question is, what talent markets do we intend to use for comparison to our organization during this comp analysis? The second question is, how competitive do we plan to be relative to our talent markets? And the third question is, what do we want to reward with our compensation dollars? So looking at the first question in our compensation strategy, what talent markets do we intend to use for comparison to our organization? The first thing that I want to highlight is the market benchmarking. So what the staff is recommending for this year's compensation analysis is to utilize relevant labor market salary information, focusing on comparable public and private sector employers within Colorado and nationally as applicable. For example, we're looking for a finance director right now, and that is a position that when we're looking at which markets do we want to look at for a comp analysis for that plan, it makes sense for that to be a nationwide market because this is a nationwide search. I think 50% of the respondents that we got from our initial recruitment was not from Colorado, because when we're looking for a very specific set of skills, we're going to have to broaden our search. So that's just one example of utilizing different talent markets. We also are going to compare organization size, industry, and location. So benchmarking will be sourced from Pay Factors pay markets to ensure accurate and competitive data. Pay Factors is the software that was purchased in 2024 in order to complete this compensation analysis. Within Pay Factors, there are several different data sources that we've purchased that give us the ability to search in many different areas. They have over 1.5 billion data points, 5,500 unique benchmark jobs, 250 industries, 28 organization size groupings, and over 30,000 geographic locations for us to filter and choose from. So pay markets will be set up to represent how and with whom we are competing for talent. So this leads to this position-specific analysis part of our compensation strategy, which is to benchmark jobs that are using relevant market data rather than a uniform approach to all positions. So you may remember in 2022, when this is brought before the board, that 7 jurisdictions were chose, and those were there were 4 cities and 3 counties, and 5 cities and 2 counties. So what we have found is that not all of our positions, all of the positions we have within the organization can be found in those 7 jurisdictions. It was limiting us the way that when this was presented, Employers Council was perceived to be limiting us because of the limited amount of scope that we had to choose from for pay markets. So the recommendation is that we're broadening our pay markets and making them more specific to the job, which is called a segmented workforce approach. It gives us the ability to use a strategy that covers multiple markets for multiple jobs to be able to create or provide data that represents the diverse needs of our workforce. For example, a administrative assistant position probably isn't going to have the same needs for a pay market as a finance director would. So it's positioning ourselves to be able to get the most relevant data that's comparable to what we're trying to look at in the job descriptions. We all are also going to be reviewing each job description and ensuring that those are up to date before we actually take this data out to the system and plug it into these markets that are going to be chosen in relationship with. I will be meeting with all of our division directors to ensure that the pay markets that we're setting up for each of the positions that they supervise are agreed upon and understood, and that they can communicate and explain to their staff why these were chosen as well. Any questions about the talent markets that we're going to be using?
You mentioned, you mentioned an organization that a lot of local governments get data from, and I can't remember the name of it anymore.
Employers Council?
Employers Council, yeah. Can you just describe who they are, what they do?
They are an organization that represents at least 5 mountain states, various municipalities and counties within those mountain states. They used to be called Mountain States Employers Council. So we have used them for guidance for review of job classifications. And we believe that although they can be a useful resource, it's more beneficial to be able to select exactly the parties and, in this case, the type of software we want to use to arrive at a proper decision. Employers Council, their data is limited to the responses that they receive from their clients. And so I believe this direction that HR is taking us in is much preferable.
Yeah, it's why we went the direction we went last year. And now we're taking an even step further down the road of improving that data with what Carol Ann's suggesting.
Okay. This is the first time I'm seeing a government be recommended to take an approach like this. Not like I track what all the other governments do, but I think generally we have a pretty similar process. Is this, and I know that you came from private industry. Does this reflect best practice in what you're used to in private industry?
Absolutely. I will tell you too, that in working with pay factors, we put an RFP out there and we looked at a lot of different options. And one of the reasons that we chose pay factors was because they do contract with a lot of local cities and counties. And they are giving them the data, and counties and cities are using them to do their comp analysis too. So it's not like we're, setting a trend here that no one's ever done before, breaking ground in a place that no one's ever prevailed. We're doing things that have been successfully done in other counties and cities, even in Colorado. So they also, that's where they get a lot of their, not a lot, but a portion of their data is from, for example, we're putting all of our data currently in the system. We'll do our comp analysis, and then that will get refreshed, and that becomes part of their database, so all of the people that are using them are putting that in, but then they're also contracted to pay for other sources to, that are HR reported data. So they're, the widest breadth that I could find of data that we could use to narrow down what makes the most sense for our jobs and the pay markets we need to compare them to.
Thank you.
Question? Okay, so the second question in our compensation strategy is how competitive do we plan to be relative to our talent markets? So for this, we're going to talk about range, spread, and benchmarking. So the pay range, as you know, is just the upper and lower limits of a compensation, including minimum, midpoint, and max. We're not changing anything there. For the range spread, we're not recommending any changes there. We're still going to use an inverted pyramid approach, which basically gradually increases the more senior the position, the spread of that pay range. A suggested change, though, is to budget up to 75% of the range for each position. This gives our hiring managers more flexibility when it comes to vacant positions to be able to make offers that are appropriate within the range, which we're going to talk about range penetration here in just a few minutes.
What are we currently budgeting for?
The minimum.
10%. I can confirm that yesterday. So right now we're budgeting up to 10% from the bottom. In addition to that, we also budget a average of the number of folks in the department who are on our health insurance. So the budget has both of those built in. So this is going to be an ongoing conversation as we bring the budget to you, how far into the range we actually need to budget. It's one of the things that we're having an ongoing conversation about.
Okay, because that's one of those things that on paper can make the budget.
It seems like it would, but considering the number of vacancies we have, and hopefully if this is successful, we'll have less vacancies and lower turnover. I personally, not being a budget professional person who does that every day, I don't think it's going to impact the budget in such a way that it's going to blast us into the stratosphere. I think it will be higher, sure, because every vacancy that we have, if we're only budgeting to minimum plus 10%, but it's incremental when you compare it to the budget as a whole. I don't think it'll be so drastic, but the flexibility it will offer our hiring managers and the culture shift it could potentially create in the way we communicate to new hires, the value that we see that they're going to bring to our organization and our high expectations of excellence in those professionals, is worth the extra pad on the budget. Because in my opinion, I would rather be realistic about what we need to operate as a county to provide the services that we need than to try to make the budget look smaller when really the needs are that we need to be able to pay people what they are worth in order to run the county the way that it needs to be run to provide services at the level that people expect them.
I think it gives us the ability to fill positions, actually fill the positions, build morale and improve performance.
Absolutely.
All of which are high priorities for us right now.
Absolutely.
And I think that without, you're gonna have to be competitive to attract and compete, and also to achieve the goal for me of trying to pay a living wage.
Yeah. It's getting harder and harder to do. So the recommendation is to continue to benchmark to the range midpoint as we've done in the past, which leads us to how competitive do we want to be? We have the option or the decision to either lead, meet, or lag the market. As you may recall, in 2022, the decision was made to lag. We only funded by 50% of the results of the compensation analysis. Our budget was in a much different state at that time. Staff is recommending that we lead by 2%. In order to attract and retain top talent and to attempt, just like Randy just said, to keep up with a rapidly changing compensation market and cost of living. This approach is one of the, I know it's a tall ask because we are still in a period of budget concern and focus, but I highly believe that investing in people is how we're going to get out of this problem. And so by leading, we are making up for the fact that we do live in a high cost of living area. We do have a very tight labor market right now, and we do have high turnover. And that's something that in government is actually, government usually trends much lower than the national and even the state averages, because government jobs are usually jobs that people want to stay in because they're good jobs. So, we have some course corrections to make here. And this is one of the recommendations that we're making, is that we benchmark to the mid plus 2%.
I want to add one more thing there. I want to be clear too that you concur with our staff recommendation only to fund it halfway. So we were all in agreement back then.
I think
It's like we're hoping we're going to be in agreement here too, but we came to you and said, can we really afford this? So
yeah, and this conversation is good to have without numbers first.
exactly.
And then when we get hit with,
Yeah.
it might be a different conversation slightly.
Well, yeah, but we got to aspire to what makes sense and then see where, sometimes you have to do it and see where it falls and reconsider.
Yeah.
That's what you're saying.
Yeah.
Okay. So the final question is, what do we want to reward with our compensation dollars? For this, we're going to talk about grade-based range and step plans. And we're not recommending a change here. We're going to employ a combination of step plans and grade-based range pay plans, which the step plans are really primarily for the sheriff's department, for the patrol and the detentions. And then everyone else in the organization would follow grade-based range plan. So these structures would continue to be reviewed and updated biannually every 2 years to ensure competitiveness within the market. However, based on comments that I've heard from several of you, that this needs to be updated more frequently. And I agree with that. However, I have to be realistic about the capacity of the HR team to do that work on a regular basis. So a kind of meet in the middle approach that I'm recommending is that when each position becomes vacant, that HR will do a compensation analysis at that time for that position. And so we are advertising at the most up-to-date compensation rate for that position, but also we will review all current staff in that position in order to combat compression using a range penetration approach. So talking about compression, of course, we know that that's when a new hire is paid at the same rate or higher than employees that have more seniority and have been in that job. And range penetration simply speaks to how far does an employee penetrate within the compensation range. And this approach gives us the ability to make decisions about where people will move within the range penetration when a position becomes vacant and we have new salary data to analyze. No questions about that? So a little bit more on range penetration. This is the key for the 4 key questions seeking to answer with this strategy is where do new hires start within the range? How does movement happen within the range? How much discretion do managers have to move someone through the range? And then how do we denote sections of the range for new employees versus proficient versus highly seasoned, high performing employees? So you can see from the picture that's up on the slide that the suggestion is range minimum really needs to be for employees that are new to the role, not new to the organization, but new to the role, meaning they're, just getting started and they really aren't coming in with a lot of experience or education to back them up. Or this is going to be employees who are currently in a low performance category or low proficiency category. The midpoint is aligning with the market. We're making offers to people in order to align them with the market. We're representing proficiency in their role and also current employees that have good performance. Range maximum is set aside for those with exceptionally high performance and expertise in their field. So that is the suggestion for the strategy to use on range penetration. And this is similar to what we did recently, that you had asked staff to complete a compensation analysis for road and bridge, and that was completed, and we used that range penetration method to look at where everyone was at in the ranges that they were currently in, did the comp analysis, the ranges moved as we thought they would, and then we moved them within the range to the new grade. So we kept them in the same penetration, but just the grade moved, so their compensation moved with it. So obviously, there's going to be some policies and process changes that will need to come from this based on this new plan. And what I plan to bring back to you when we bring you the data from the compensation analysis is an updated compensation plan guidelines. The last time that was updated was 2020, which will make changes to not only the process, but the methodology we use for making compensation decisions within the organization. And that's going to be what you see here: job offers, how we're going to create new jobs, promotions, how we're going to handle pay increases, and how we're going to handle the outliers that exist based on the results of the compensation analysis. And the last thing that I want to talk about is the communication plan. So my suggestion, my recommendation is that we don't just stop with the what are you getting paid, that we create strategies and intention communication plans that explain to our staff how we came up with the data, what markets did we use, where did we go, what strategies did the board approve, and why. Explain why we're doing what we're doing, which is how I started off this presentation, explaining why. Because, you know, in order to ask our staff to improve and to come to work with excellence every day, we need to give that to them. And then ending the communication plan with openly published pay ranges and salaries. We do that for the public because we're required to right now, but my suggestion is that we are more proactive than that and that we include this compensation data at the time of hire. So it's something they read and they sign off on. It's something their supervisors are having conversations with them about. How did we come to this decision? Where are our pay grades currently? Where are you at? And what strategies do we use to get there? What pay markets are used? And it seems like a lot of information, but something that I'm trying to combat here is the idea that we are not being transparent with our pay practices. And I've heard this for the last 2 years that the feeling, the sentiment among staff is that even though we're public and we publish our salaries, it's not easy to find. It's not easy to understand why we do what we do. And when people don't understand things, they make assumptions, and assumptions aren't always in the favor of you know, the people
Usually
making the
not.
decisions, right?
Usually not.
So this is an effort to be as open and transparent as possible and open dialogue with staff about the process, the what, how, where, why, and when, and whoa. So lastly, on the communication plan, primary reason for this, because this is such an emotionally charged topic. When we had our in-service day, one of the questions that was asked of staff when we had the big group presentation and everyone got to get out their phones and participate in a poll. One of the questions was something along the lines of why do you get out of bed every morning and come to work? And the number one answer was pay, money, compensation, which for a purpose-driven organization, that's alarming because we are so close to our purpose, because we are connected to the community that we serve and the services we provide and why we do what we do and the people that are impacted by what we do. So to have the answer be pay is alarming. And it's something that we need to address, we need to fix, and then we need to open up and communicate with staff why we did what we did and kind of combat the idea that what we're doing is secret and it's all about money.
Well, you know, there's a few ways to interpret that too. You know, if the first thing top of mind is pay, then it can be that you're focused on pay because you're struggling. You know, I mean, that's why and they're trying to communicate that. But there's another piece to it that's troubling is you like, you know, you can also, you need the job to be rewarding in order for that to be the reason you come to work. So there's kind of a yin and a yang there we're talking about.
And I want to add, part of this communication plan is us making things more readily available to staff. It's not that these things weren't being hidden, but we don't have some of the tools in place that other organizations have today, like an intranet, where they know where they can go and access a compensation plan, those kinds of things. So some of this is making things easier for staff to find.
So the last thing that I'm going to touch on is just the roles for communication for this communication plan. First is HR, preparing the program, presenting it to the board, presenting it to the leadership team, and training managers where applicable. For the board, it's you're responsible for approving the compensation plan, providing support and guidance. Leadership team, it's responsible for communicating at the high level of the organization. And managers and supervisors, their role is to understand this program and communicate the information to their employees and seek support from HR where needed. So I find that this is the point that we can lose the quickest is when managers, supervisors are not understanding why we're doing what we're doing. And when they are asked, because they're the first person that's going to get asked about their pay, they don't have a good answer. And no answer is an answer. So employees' communication, the main expectation is that they understand and agree with the program. And if they don't, that they openly communicate with their managers and with HR. And, we can only address the issues that we know. So the part of employees' communication is tell us what your concerns are and allow us to address them and fix them if they need to be fixed. So that is all I have for you today. Do you have any questions?
I asked mine.
I don't have questions. I have an observation or two that I might want to share. I really liked your slide on the communication plan with the what, how, where, why. And I'm just wondering if the why should be in the first position. You don't have to answer today. You don't have to change it. It seems to me that if we're trying to attract and retain employees, perhaps the why is important.
I agree with you. I think like today, it started with why, not to rob, what's his face, but
Cynic.
yeah. But this isn't, so I guess I know that it's deceiving because it is a kind of linear looking path, but I don't think that communication is ever linear in that way where you're like, I'm going to say this to you right now. And then next I'm going to say this to you. I mean, I think that it's a great point that any conversation about compensation should always start with why, and everyone should be in agreement on what that is.
I'd also like to share, I really appreciated your presentation. When I wrote down a question, you answered it within a slide or two.
Oh.
So thank you. Good mind reading.
That helps keep Mitch from talking to me.
Yeah.
I'm learning from the best, Randy. One of our audiences to consider in your communication plan is also our non-employee stakeholders. Our citizens,
Mhm.
I think, need to also understand the hard work you're doing and what we're trying to do for our employees.
Mhm. I think the quality of actually, the part of it is optically, the quality of this is good and it's easily understood. It's honest, it's not rocket science, and that's not a slam. It shouldn't be rocket science.
Feels
It
like-
should be simplified to where even a county commissioner can understand.
Yeah.
I support these recommendations. I think that this should be our aspirational approach to compensation. I think if we come up with, and I think we're likely to, a conflict between what we aspire to
And what's real.
and the impact on our budget. It might be helpful to have some thoughts about a plan to close that gap over time. I think the public engagement piece of this is crucial because we're having a very live conversation with the public about our budget right now. And when I go out and I say, we got our budget from, was it $3.9 million deficit budgeted in 2023 to 0.9
Mhm.
in 2024.
When
We should also be able to say,
it
and
was 2.9, and the 2.9 what came down to 500,000 by the time we were at the end of that fiscal year. So we bridged some of that gap during the year in terms of savings.
right. So when we're communicating our budget, we should be able to say with confidence, Oh, and also we're paying people what they're worth. We're paying people enough that they want to come here, they want to stay here. We shouldn't be saying with the position we're in right now, we're in a budget deficit and we're struggling to hire. Right? Like so I support this approach. And I think there's definitely like I want to encourage a public engagement strategy around we're taking this step and here's what it means. Here's what it means to the budget. In my mind, this is largely about communicating honestly and in a well-informed way about what it's going to take for the services that people want, right? We're asking people right now, what kind of services do you want? What kind of services do you think you can do without? What are you willing to pay for those services? And this is going to help us. I don't want to say honest because I don't think we've been trying to deceive by underpaying people. But a more complete, a more simple and clear conversation with the public we need to have.
I think that, I'm sorry.
No, go for it, Randy.
I think that accomplishes a few things. I mean, for one thing, we've got, it helps us by approaching it that way. And, you know, using a template like this, we're able to, I think our aspirational goal is to be able to take care of people and have them feel rewarded, both in the work and in the pay at the end of the day. But when we come up against the reality of this continual moving target that we've been whittling down, you know, our budget issues, we have a way both to explain it, but also to see what the gap is and plan for the gap in a way that everyone can understand that's really, really transparent. Because the difference between, I've heard a lot in this community and other communities, people make statements, well, we're always going to be this and we're all going to be always going to be that. Well, we can't do this because of this, as though that's a given. It's a benchmark that's always going to be there. It's a static thing that you can't change. You can't figure out how to change. And and the problem is that contributes to an expectation of scarcity versus one of sustainability or even prosperity. And if living in a philosophy or world of scarcity is something that you resign yourself to, that's not, to me, that's not, I mean, we are subject to reality, but we're also subject to being able to change our future, and we've got to be able to do that. So we've got to be able to look this plainly, and the citizens have to be able to see it, and our staff has to be able to see it. And know our aspirational goal is for a living wage and a rewarding job to be able to be here. And that's what we're shooting for, even though we may have to trim it below what, you know, this attempt tells us we want to go. We got to let them know that's still the target. This is where we are today, but then create a plan to close that goal the same way we're creating plans to balance the budget, as an example, which we're moving towards, but we haven't gotten there yet. It's got to be an equally important goal for our staff to be rewarded in their job and being here.
You know,
That's my take.
some robust public engagement about excellence in compensation really sets the stage for a future conversation about revenue. You know, we're talking about what we're doing for our people so we can continue to provide services. And we're setting the stage to have that more difficult conversation sometime in the future.
Right. Because that will likely be part of the solution.
I can't imagine a solution that doesn't include that.
Hopefully the legislature gives us some better options.
Mr. Chair, I just want to say thank you to Carol Ann. She brought forward a different way for us to view this. And I appreciate that. Fresh eyes help us sometimes get out of this is how we've always done it in local government kind of looks sometimes. So I just want to say thank you for that.